All right. Joining us right now from NBC Sports Philadelphia. You can follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow. Well, for right now, maybe he's going to Threads too, Derek, at Zangaro NBCS. That would be Dave's. Dave, have you also created a Threads account? Because Derek is staunchly opposed, my friend.
No.
I made one. I'm not on there yet.
Oh, geez.
See,
yeah,
Derek?
it's cute. I get it, and I feel like
it's like insurance, right?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm becoming de-gunned because, like, there's too much.
Yes, thank you.
Like, I gotta check another thing on my phone, like another one. I can't.
I know. Yeah, we don't spend enough time locked to our phone, right?
Yeah, it's like we're already on the phone all the time anyway. Now it's like I gotta check Threads, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Like, it's too much.
Hey, Dave, are you at the point where? Because my wife just is on me all the time about this. She says, I think you're married to the phone instead of me. It's almost like I have to get a new phone like every 2 to 3 years because these batteries are so cheap. They tell, longer lasting batteries in these. No, they're not. They lied to you. You pay all this money for a stupid phone, and all of a sudden that nice long battery charge that you get a year later is 80%.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happens.
You pay all this stupid money for these batteries, and you're like, I might as well just get a new phone. Are you that bad where every 3 years you got to get a new phone?
I haven't gotten one in a while. I'll wait it out, like out of principle, but it's annoying because you got to like keep charging the phone. Then you got to bring like the extra little battery pack with you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tricky because like for our jobs, we kind of have to be on the phone, right? But like. There are times where like I'll even notice like I'll be watching TV and I'm not even watching TV. I'm watching my phone while watching.
Yeah, like what am I doing? Yeah,
so sometimes what I really will do is I'll put my phone on the other side of the room and like if I'm watching a baseball game, like put it on the other side of the room, charge it somewhere, and then just like watch the game. And it's amazing like how little focus I have now.
But do you
I caught myself doing it last night in the Phillies game. I'm like, what am I doing? Am I watching this game or am I not watching it? I just chuck the phone on the couch.
But because we're always looking for breaking news from local media, national media, it's like you separate yourself from the phone, but it's like almost like an anxiety.
Yeah,
it's like I gotta have my phone closer to me.
You're right.
I don't care if I leave credit cards at home. I'll circle back and be late for an event to get my phone.
It's not healthy. I can tell you that.
But because of what we do, it's required.
It's not healthy, but it's necessary, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of, but also like you miss one thing, is the world gonna come crumbling down around us?
It's true. Yeah, I think we make a little bit more out of that than it actually is. That's for sure. Well, so listen, we know how you like to travel. Where was the latest since the last time we talked? I understand you were on the road again.
Yeah, it was fun. I think I mentioned this to you guys last time I was talking to you, but I was up in British Columbia for a few days, and then I was in Washington State, and it was great. I was went to Vancouver Island with some buddies.
Nice.
A sports angle here. My like childhood favorite player in any sport was Rod Brindamore. Okay. And we were in the hometown of Rod Brindamore, Campbell River, British Columbia on Vancouver Island. And it was funny. We didn't even know it until one of the locals we're talking to him about hockey, and he mentioned it. And then the restaurant we went to had a big like Brindamore jersey up there side. So it was fun to see that.
That's cool, man. That's a funny coincidence right there. That's awesome. All right, let me ask you this, Dave, because Gunnar and I were having some fun with this, with Lane, and we had Brandon Graham and Kelsey on recently. Favorite guy since you've been, I know you were in Houston prior to coming here, but favorite guy for you to cover since you've been on the Eagles beat?
Oh,
yeah. No, I've thought about this before because I think there are like different ways to be a favorite player to cover, right? Like, are they just the most fun guy? Are they the best quote? Are they the most thoughtful? Like
fun,
most fun?
Yeah.
I mean, BG he's just fun to be around. He's one of a kind. I'm always like amazed, and Gunnar, I know you're close with him. I'm always amazed that he is the way he is after knowing everything he went through. And it really kind of tells you how he got through all that because of his personality. He's fun. I mean, he's just a fun guy to be around. We get the same kind of energy off of him that his teammates get. I mean, not as much as they get. They probably need it more than we do, but yeah, he's just a fun guy to be around. I think about like Malcolm Jenkins. Like, I feel like I learned so much from Malcolm.
Yeah, deep.
Yeah, just amazing too. Like, I'm used to doing the interviewing, and on occasion, like I'll be here with you guys and I get asked questions. And I think about like, if I were in his shoes, how would I handle some of these things? And he was just so good at just being super thoughtful about any topic. And like with Malcolm, there was a period there where you could go to a Malcolm Jenkins press conference or a media scrum, and he could be asked anything. Like it was like football. It was about his teammates. It was about the world. It was about race relations. It was a catch-all, and he just could pivot back and forth so smoothly between them. I enjoyed covering him. I felt like I learned a lot from Malcolm.
All right, let me ask you this one, because we talked about this a short while ago. Of these three players, Kelsey, Graham, Cox, which of the three is more likely to be back in 24?
Kelsey, Graham, Cox.
That's a tough one.
Probably Graham. Just because like I'm trying to think about it in terms of like salary too.
He's cheap. Yeah,
he's going to be cheaper, and like he wants to play 15 years. He's always said he wants to play 15 years. Yeah. That would be year 15. He already took a discount to play year 14. Mm-hmm. He'd probably do it again to play year 15. And at that point, if Nolan Smith is what you think he is, now BG is the fourth option.
Yep.
So I could see that. Kelsey, it's just tough to say. I mean,
it's more his call than anything.
It's absolutely his call, and it feels like this could be the last year, but we've thought that before. And Cox, I think he wants to keep playing. I think it's possible he's back. We got to see how he plays this year. I thought he had kind of a nice resurgent year last year, but they're still going to be relying on him an awful lot. Like BG, the transition from being a starter, playing a ton of snaps, to being a rotational guy, it was kind of natural because he had that injury, and he came back, and it was just like, all right, now you're in this role. Josh Sweat has ascended. We have Hassan Reddick. Now you're the third guy, and it was like perfect timing and just worked out well coming off the injury. That can be a tricky thing sometimes when you have this like all-time great player trying to now become a rotational guy. I think that would be tough for Fletcher.
It's good, well thought out, Gunner. That was a good answer.
I said Kelsey only because if Kelsey wins a ring this year, I think definitely he rides off into the sunset.
Yep.
But I think his competitive juices, especially if they had another good season and got close, would propel him to give it one more try beyond this year. I mean, 2 years in a row, Howie's giving the guy $14 million to come back on a one-year deal. I mean, I understand you get to a point, you got little kids now, you want to be a full-time parent, full-time husband. But, man, when an organization loves you the way that they love both Graham and Kelsey, and it's your call as to whether you want to come back or not, I mean, 14 million, still 14 million,
It is. But I also don't think that's like as big a driving force for Kelsey as it might be for other guys. Mm-hmm. Look, you're right. 14 mil is 14 mil. He's made a lot of money.
Yep.
And he's not like a guy who's living above his means.
No.
Wears the same thing every day. Like he shows up looking like me going to the beach to the game. Like that's just fine. It's cool. But like I don't think he's hard up for the money right now. But you're right. I think there's a reason he's still playing right now, right? And he's playing at a high level. He's on a really competitive team. He likes and like the Nick Sirianni. So we haven't talked about that, but like the way Nick Sirianni handles these guys, if I were an older player, I'd want to be here too. Like he's extending these careers.
That's a great point.
With the way he handles training camps and in-season practices. And if you're an older player, like that's pretty appealing. If you're Fletcher Cox and you're like, I'm in my 30s, I've played a ton of football, I'm going to go somewhere else and have to deal with real practices again and not have my status. That's a tough sell.
That's Dave. Great point. Great point.
Another point.
I know you wrote today about Nakobe Dean and time to see what he can do. Do you think he's ready? Do you think he will be an impact linebacker? Do you think they made the right moves, essentially turning this over to him right now and Nick Morrow?
I don't know if it's the right move turning it over to him and Nick Morrow. I don't know. I don't know if they have enough at the position in general, but I still feel pretty good about Nakobe Dean. And I just wish, looking back at last year, that Jonathan Gannon would have found a way to get him on the field, because he could have.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have had 3 linebacker packages. He could have found ways to get him out there. There was a moment where Kaiser White was probably dealing with an injury. He was struggling a little bit. So it was like it raised my eyebrows that Nakobe didn't get on the field, but I also think some of that was just on Gannon. Right. I think he probably could have found a way to play him more, because the organization clearly thinks a lot of him, right? Like, they drafted him in the 3rd round. They talked about drafting him in the 2nd round, and now they've handed over that pretty important position to him in year 2. So, like, those two things don't add up to me. Like, all right, if you're ready to hand him that job in year 2, why couldn't you find him any work in year 1, unless they were just so sold on the idea of it being a redshirt season? I don't really get that. Look, I think he can be a playmaker in the right defense, and I think they have enough talent up front that it can make his job a lot easier as a linebacker. It's kind of like what we saw with him at Georgia. I mean, that line was stacked, and this line is stacked. So if he just has to, I don't want to simplify the Mike linebacker position. There's a lot going into it, but if he's cleaning up for those guys in front of him, I have full faith that he has, like, the intelligence aspect of it to be the green dot, to get guys lined up. And if he has to just clean up after that, I feel okay about that.
Hey, Dave, how difficult and or frustrating is it to be creative in your writing at this stage? Because you guys lost that week of the mandatory OTAs in June, which gives you more extended time off. You know, a lot of times what we would like to do is that last definitive week is compile a whole bunch of stuff you could sit on through late June all the way through mid-July, but you didn't have that access now. You know, how difficult, and I've asked you, and I'm asking you, and I've asked other writers as well, how difficult is that for you to have that lengthy period now where you don't have those tidbits that you normally got in June?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing I miss most is just getting a better sense of the team in the spring.
Okay.
You're watching 2 practices. It's tough. Like, we used to watch every OTA practice and every mini camp practice, and you felt like you had a better sense of, like, where the team was. And now there was this temptation to overhype or to care too much about what you saw in the spring, and I think that was always dangerous. But I also think it's dangerous to watch 2 practices out of 6 and think, all right, I know what this team is, or I know what this player is, because on the days I showed up, he showed up. I mean, that's not fair. I wish we could watch all of their practices. I think it would give us a fuller sense of exactly what's happening. Because, like, if we watch 2 of 6 practices, I have to tell you what I saw on those 2 days, and that might not be what really took place over the course of the entire spring. So, like, I think that's the tougher part for me. As far as the content goes, like, yeah, I mean, there's no secret here. We're kind of repackaging a lot of the same stuff, finding new ways to say it, which is fine. I mean, there's a hunger for football, and we bring it to everyone. But yeah, once you get into mid-July, you're like, yeah, I could certainly use some actual stuff to write and talk about, other than, but that's what it is. And it's like, you try to do it honestly when you're repackaging this stuff. You don't want to make it seem like this is breaking news that Nakobe Dean, like, we all know it. It's just like, all right, can I back this up, or do I have an opinion on it? Can I provide some analysis, whether it's through stats or anecdotal stuff? And if you can do that, then at least you're adding something to it instead of just completely regurgitating it.
How big a challenge is it going to be with the 2 new coordinators? Do you think we're not maybe paying enough attention to that, Dave, or we're just looking at, hey, they have Jalen Hurts, and this is a really talented roster, but we've seen teams really take a hit when they've lost even 1 coordinator. This team's lost 2. How big a deal is that?
It's a big deal to replenish your staff. And I don't know if Nick Sirianni nailed all of his new hires, but based on hearing about the process he went through to get them, and I'm not just talking about the coordinators, I'm talking about some of the position coaches and lower level coaches that they hired, like, the process was thorough. So if they failed in hiring one of these guys, it wasn't for lack of effort, and that makes you feel good because I think he the way Nick Sirianni looks at hiring coaches really lines up with what Jeff Lurie wants. And I think that's really one of the reasons Lurie likes him so much. He had a plan for his coaching staff when he got hired, but he also had a plan for how to replace these guys when they inevitably left if there was success. And that happened. So on offense, you feel better about it. They're going to miss Shane Steichen. You can't just duplicate that type of play calling. He had a real flair for it. I always say the word I like to use with Shane Steichen calling plays was diabolical. He was fun to watch as a play caller. He was killed tendencies, really smart, would hit defenses with things they weren't expecting. Even if it was the same play he just ran, they're not ready for it again. He was really good at that type of thing. And Brian Johnson can't try to be Shane Steichen play calling. He just has to be his own guy. I think his understanding of Jalen Hurts gives him a leg up. When you understand the quarterback, it makes it a lot easier to call plays. As far as the offense in general, it's still Nick Sirianni's offense. And I think another year with the quarterback in that offense, with most of the starters returning in that offense, you don't worry about that. On defense, I don't know yet. We haven't seen enough. We think it's going to be pretty similar. At least the staples will be pretty similar to what Gannon was running in year 2, which was different, by the way, than what Gannon was running in year 1. It kind of morphed year over year. So I think a lot of those staples are going to be similar with Desai. You can look back at his year in Chicago as the DC and see what we think he's going to run. I'm curious to see if there's any influence from his time in Seattle. I kind of doubt it. He's talked so much about being a Fangio guy that I think that's a lot of what we're going to see. And honestly, it's a lot of what we saw last year. The biggest difference is going to be terminology and getting everyone caught up on that. And then after that, I'm curious to see what he has in store play calling wise, because Gannon, we all know the perceived faults of Jonathan Gannon, that he wasn't aggressive enough, right? That was the top one. And that doesn't mean blitzing all the time, but it means kind of having a persona for your defense. And that's what Desai's talked about. I really want to see it carry over and see what he means.
Dave, I think it's going to be such an interesting dynamic in terms of watching how this defense comes together and exactly what input Matt Patricia has. On the surface, it's, Desai's defense, but I think Patricia was brought in here to be more than just a consultant. When you consider the limited amount of experience that Desai has as a DC, there's a reason why they have, I hate to use the term looking over his shoulder, but basically, for lack of a better phrase, to me, it's like Patricia's been brought in here to look over his shoulder. And I wonder how much input he will have exactly in the defensive concepts.
Yeah, it's a fair question, especially because the defense, for the most part, that they've run in New England is pretty different than what the Eagles are going to be running. Obviously, there's only so much you can do with 11 guys on the field, but I don't know about that. And when they hired Matt Patricia, the first thing you thought was, is the juice worth the squeeze here, especially given his history with Darius Slay. And I don't think that's nothing. I know some people are like, they're professionals, look it over it. I mean, they've worked so hard to create a really strong family atmosphere in the building. They worked so hard to keep Slay when that whole thing went down in the offseason. And now to bring in his mortal enemy, I question it a little bit. I think that's fair to question it. I know Nick Sirianni said he spoke to Slay before it happened, but I don't think he was asking Slay for his blessing. I think it was, hey, we're doing this. Are we going to be okay here? We're not going to and what's Slay going to say in that situation? They want to bring in a coach. They want to bring in a coach. So for all of that, you just hope that Patricia's adding enough value, and without them telling us what his role is specifically, and without me really digging into it much yet, I don't know what it is. I know he has experience, and I know he flamed out as a head coach. Once upon a time, he was a relatively successful coach in this league, so we'll see. And they also, Marcus Brady is a guy on the offensive side we haven't talked about a lot. They brought him in quietly as a consultant last year, and they kept him on staff. He's another guy with coordinator experience that they added to the coaching staff.
Wow.
Dave, and I'm going to throw Slay in there too, even though he wasn't technically a free agent. But which Eagle are you most surprised is back? And, you know, that would be in the Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Bradbury, you know, et cetera, the guys who could have walked. Who surprised you the most that he's still on the Eagles roster?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of put Slay out of the conversation because that was just such a weird thing on that day when they were about
he's firing off
day,
tweets.
Yeah, like if we're starting from that moment, he'd probably be the most surprising. But overall, it was Bradbury. The market was not as strong for him as I thought it was going to be. Which, look, I get it. He's going to turn 30 soon, and even coming off a good year, there's a risk involved. I thought he was going to get more money, and honestly, I thought the Eagles were going to re-sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So, like that, then that's exactly what happened. They couldn't re-sign C.J. That didn't work out, and they had this money. They spent it elsewhere. And we've seen that before. You know, like a few years ago, the receiver market kind of blew up, and the Eagles were like, "Oh, we're not paying that. We had this other money." Oh, Javon Hargrave. So, like they'll do that. They'll pivot and they'll find ways to get different players. Bradbury's one I didn't see coming. I didn't think they'd sink that much into these two guys, having Bradbury and Slay, but they're running it back, and it's understandable. They were really good last year.
We were talking about something earlier in the show, and you since you're still there, do you miss the days of Lehigh? And the reason I ask you is this. I do, because it was funny how we run like sheep when a player roll up just to get video of them bringing in their fans and their TVs. The aspect I don't miss is standing out in the heat, sweating, waiting under trees for players to arrive, which they did at their own leisure, number one. And number two, when you'd have the scrums, you'd always get one or two people, men and women, I'm going to include women as well, when they'd raise their armpits like this, is like, oh. And on top of that, you'd have two or three men and women. Then when they breathe on you, you'd be like, oh, geez. Oh, my goodness.
I like that you think that doesn't happen at the NovaCare complex.
Yeah, but it's condensed now, more so than when it was up. It was like free fall up there, man.
Enjoy your lunch, everybody.
Yeah. It's tough for me too because I'm short gunner. I'm at the wrong level for all that. I miss parts of Lehigh. I miss having fans there every day. It's to me it really stinks that fans get one opportunity to watch this team practice.
Yeah.
In a summer, and they used to do a couple. I wish they would do more. And I know it's not the best practice environment over there at the stadium, but man, I missed that part of it. That was cool. Like. Seeing a guy like become a fan favorite at practice because he makes long catches or he makes an acrobatic play. Like I miss that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't miss. It was fun being up there. I don't know if I just miss being up there. A lot of the times I wasn't like staying there. I used to drive back and forth.
Me too.
Me too.
So like that was a lot of driving. And I like that drive. It's pretty at times, but man, that was a lot. Waiting for players was funny. I have a good one. I was remember the tight end Visante Shenko?
Oh yeah.
What a name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a pull. And it was like one of my first years covering the team. And I wasn't even like really covering the team. They were like giving me at bats, right? They're just giving me chances to do stuff. The Eagles had him in for a workout. So I waited out front of that building. That was like
it was almost like the common ground. It was like there was like a whole building structure right there.
Where the weight room was, and
whatever that building was. I waited out front of that for an hour and a half for Visante Shenko. And there were a few other people in the beginning, and they all peeled off. I'm not waiting for Visante Shenko to come out here. And I was like, well, I can't leave. This is my job today. I'm trying to like prove myself. So I'm out there. I'm not eating lunch. I'm just waiting. Finally, he comes out. I interview him for like 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. He wants to leave. He goes on his way, tells me the workout went great, pretty optimistic and everything. So I go back. I write the story. I get it posted. 5 minutes after I get it posted, he signed with the Patriots.
Oh, wow.
That was my afternoon with Visante Shenko. Yeah.
How about that?
How about when you'd wait all day on the side where the parking lot and the basketball hoops were? You'd wait and wait for one particular guy, and they come out. Oh, I can't talk right now. I got to get somewhere. You stand there going, you want to hit him in the head with a microphone.
I waited here for 2 hours in this heat.
Yeah. 2 hours sweating and getting heat stroking. You're telling me you can't talk for 3 minutes. That's all I'm asking, 3 minutes. Oh, man, I really wish I could. I can't talk today. I got to. And you know they're not going anywhere except back to the dorm. And you stand there going, okay, all right.
It would happen.
Yes, it would. Dave, biggest threat in the NFC?
49ers.
Cowboys, Niners over the Cowboys? Okay.
Yeah, it's close, though. I think the Cowboys are a pretty good team. I really do. I think it's those three, Eagles, Cowboys, and Niners. I think they're the tops. And look, I'm not sold on Brock Purdy as much as some other people, but I look at that Niners roster and think, man, it's really good. And Shanahan has proven in the past that if anyone can, I don't want to say hide a quarterback. You can't hide a quarterback, but you can minimize the impact of the position. It's him in that offense. When McCaffrey's healthy, he's an absolute game changer. Now we'll see if he can stay healthy for an entire season. Again, I don't know if he can, but if he can, like that, he's a real X factor in that offense. They have weapons everywhere. That defense is stacked, and they add Hargrave to it. So, I think the Niners overall have a roster that rivals the Eagles. The difference to me is still the quarterback position. The Eagles have the best in the NFC, and I'm not quite as sold on Purdy as some other folks are.
Interesting. All right, Dave. Well, listen, man, appreciate you hopping on, and we'll check you out, of course, on Threads. No, on Twitter at Zangaro NBCS and NBC Sports Philadelphia.com. Dave, we appreciate it, man.
I got to start promoting my Threads. I'm out.
Get your Threads, man. Get your Threads ready, Dave. See you, Dave. Thanks.
Forget that.
He's the best, man. Dave's the best. Always fun talking shop with Dave. That's for sure. All right, Gunner. Yeah, well, I'll tell you. We sit here now, and what happens in the last few weeks before you get to camp, and we're 19 days away. What you start to do at this time is you start to overthink things. You know what I mean? Like you start to overanalyze things a little bit and convince yourself or scare yourself, where it was like, why did I feel different a month ago than I feel right now? It's because you're thinking about it too much, like anything in life.
Not me, brother. Not me. I take it as it comes. I can't, because I think there's way too much emphasis on things that we see in camps. The wow factor that you see come out of camps. And I always say, hey, it's a controlled environment. It's a lot different. And so that's why, you